be the one that's holding back tears and just being strong for my daughter. And it's like, don't fucking come in somebody's life if you're gonna do that. I told you.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know who's B, it's a girl called B coming at you for a new video. So today we're going to be talking about the Love is Blind Season 10 reunion. So let's get right into the video because this reunion was actually pretty decent. It wasn't, too lackluster. I think, in this reunion, Vanessa and Nick Lachey decided to clock in for real to hold these contestants accountable. In this reunion, they invited back all the contestants from the past 10 seasons, 10 seasons back to the for the reunion. Basically, they showcase, couples, the married couples for sure. And then they brought out the season 10 contestants, basically everyone who got engaged. So, one of the first things that Nick and Vanessa Lachey discussed that, this is like the first time that I guess their producers followed 7 engaged couples. So they basically saw why did Vic and Christine were the only ones sent to Malibu while everyone went to Cabo, Mexico. So it's just kind of like, okay, like what's tea? So they were like, oh, they always done 6, and I guess they're only allowed to only do 6. And then, since Vic and Christine's, relationship was so solid, they decided to still invest into that and showcase that on screen. I feel like if it wasn't for adding Vic and Christine in the mix, which is their only solid couple to this day from season 10, you would have had a lackluster season, which is like, okay, another season where all the couples failed, all the marriages failed, like there's no people going strong. Like it would have been very like, okay, is love really blind? Like does this experiment still need to continue? Because I'm just like, these couples be seeming to fail. And like luckily Vic and Christine met, they got married, everything. So they discussed that. So we got to discuss Vic and Christine. They're still going strong, they're still married. They talked about their living situations that I think Christine was from Cleveland. Vic was in Columbus. They decided to have move to Columbus. Their families come and visit them all the time. Very loving relationship, still going strong. Talk about their little pet peeves, which is socks and Angry Birds, and it's it's just such a sweet relationship. And obviously just hearing Vic just talk about their relationship still is a covenant, hello, very much keep in their Bible. I'm so glad that those are my fave from this season. So anyways, we moved on to Amber and Jordan. So Amber and Jordan, they're no longer together. Their marriage only lasted 4 months. So Jordan was just speaking on the relationship of how things went downhill. So essentially Jordan and Amber did not decide to move in together. He still had his house or his place in the city, and she still had her place in Mount Vernon, Ohio, whatever. So with that being said, they only meet each other on the weekends or whatever. So I guess Jordan said sometimes he would have drove up there and cook and make dinner for her or whatever, but I guess she never really appreciated it. So he was kind of okay, well, if I'm already going out of my way to come drive up there, make food, and you still don't really count that as making an effort, then why even try? So there's that. They didn't move in together. They were still living separate houses, separate areas. So then I guess there was a situation where they're married now. Jordan invited Amber to his friend's wedding. He was the best man, but Amber arrived to the wedding very late. She got drunk, all that, things like that. So he kind of aired her out, and he was basically saying how the situation occurred is that how she talks to him is very always yelling at him, storming off. And the thing is, she did not help her case when she stormed off in the middle of the conversation or whatever with Jordan and left the thing when she's screaming at him. And basically just shows he couldn't, he said the relationship was giving toxic, unhealthy, it wasn't good. So she basically was saying oh, why you never said bye to her daughter Emma? And, you know, he was like, oh, you never said bye. So she was like, well, I'm not, like, you know, I'm not really her father. You know, I don't know really how to, like, you know, tell the kid of, you know, the person that he was seeing that, oh, the relationship is, you know, broken up. And, like, to be honest, it's really on Amber to say, like, oh, well, you know, her and Jordan are no longer together, you know, it's very unfortunate, but this is the case. Not really putting it on Jordan. Like, yeah, they build a bond and relationship, and it's very sad to see, but at the end of the day, it's on you as her mother to say, like, yeah, this is what happened between me and Jordan, unfortunately, blah blah blah. Like, to basically put on him. Mind you, Jordan is not Emma's father. He you know, tried to build a relationship with Emma, but in a span of 4 months of being married, it really wasn't that deep. But I understand that, you know, obviously he was going to take on the role as Emma's stepfather, and obviously, you know, it's kind of sad and disappointing to, like, a 7-year-old, like, oh, you know, the guy that I, you know, introduced as, you know, the husband is now like, oh, we're no longer together, which is, like, really sad. So she really took it a lot. Amber definitely needs to, you know, work on herself and her anger and everything. I mean, obviously, coming into the situation, she was a man-hater and everything like that. So, you know, and she had, like, past relationships that obviously she was comparing it with Jordan. And, you know, she needs to, like, you know, heal from that hurt. And, you know, obviously, yeah, she has a lot to work on. And obviously, with how she, you know, acted at the reunion, it basically proves Jordan's point, like, you know, the relationship was giving toxic and unhealthy. So moving along, you know, basically he tried to, you know, she wanted to make it work, but it was like, I guess, you know, he had up to here that, you know, he didn't see any progress, so he was just like, yeah, let's end the thing. To Connor and Bree. So we find out in this reunion that Connor and Bree are still together, which is like the shocker of it all, because they, you know, Bree broke up the relationship, so Connor and Bree actually still being together, they're actually dating, you know, whatever. And obviously she sees, you know, getting married, going down the altar with him. So, you know, she talked about, like, you know, Connor still appreciating her and loving her, you know, when she wasn't herself. You know, she, you know, obviously still loves Connor. She's in a relationship with him. Shocking it is. Well, Chris situation. And, yo, they were really tagging Chris up. Rightfully so. But he was getting tagged up bad. So, obviously, they showed the conversation where he's, like, basically talking to Bree. And, like, for a long time, basically dissing Jess. And obviously, you know, Bree had to, well, obviously apologize because she entertained, like, why are you entertaining the guy who basically ragged on Jess, who was your friend, you know, a guy that obviously who's dissing on your fiance at that time, you know, why were you entertaining him for that long? And that was just kind of like, okay, like, you know, you apologized for it and basically said, like, you know, she probably shouldn't have given him the time of day, and she really shouldn't have. So we moved on to Chris, and Chris, obviously, he had to see that. He's like, oh, I didn't really like, it was hard to watch it back, da da da. He apologized, and, you know, Nick was just like, oh, that's it?
I'm not proud of a lot of those moments.
That's it? I mean, Connor just illustrated for us how close the two of you were during filming. Working out together in the mornings, riding together. When you guys split up, you and Jess, he was the one standing there kind of talking you through it all. And then to turn around and do that to him when he was mere feet away from you. And then after the fact, go over to him and bro it up like nothing ever happened. I'm just not sure what it says about you. That's probably for you and a therapist to figure out, but I promise you it's not good.
Like, you don't have nothing else to say. So he apologized to Connor because he was like, you know, Connor and Chris during filming were actually good friends. And, you know, to see how Chris basically kind of like almost try to get his girl right from under him, crazy work, and the things that he said about Connor, basically undermining him and dissing him off, was just kind of like really bad. So, you know, he apologized to Connor, and then to Jess, he apologized to Jess, but Jess was like, I don't need to hear anything else you have to say. Like, you know, you're really kind of like a nobody to me. Like, you're really no one to me at that point. And, you know, she kind of, and the thing about Jess leveled up, okay? She found herself a doctor, Dr. Hermold, okay? Hermold, he was the MVP of this reunion because this guy really like spoke life into Jess. Like, he had so much words of love and encouragement for her, basically. And like, he's a doctor. Like, hello? Leveled up. And the thing is, though, was so interesting was that he had like a really strong connection with her in the pods, but she ended up choosing Chris, which I'm just like, we need to actually see stuff like that during filming, because I'm just like, I didn't even know who this guy was until the reunion, and then we find out that him and Jess originally had like a connection in the pods, but obviously it wasn't, I guess, strong enough at the time because she ended up going with Chris. And then, you know, he doubled back, spoke to her, picked her up when, you know, when she was going through it with, you know, after the Chris situation, and, you know, after times went on, basically made a move, and, you know, they're dating for the past, you know, 6-7 months. So, yeah, and, you know, they're in love, everything, and it's, like, you know, so great for Jess, because, you know, definitely was, like, what Chris said and did was just very much disrespectful on so many accounts. Like, he definitely got tagged up. Like, Nick was making sure that he was held accountable, and it was just like, yeah, make sure you get the help that you need. Moving on to Alex and Ashley, Ashley basically said, like, oh, she did record, like, she rehearsed what she had to say at the, you know, the wedding. She basically said that it was actually Alex that was supposed to speak first, but she was like, I cut him off because she didn't want to get rejected at the wedding, da-da-da. She also was saying, like, you know, that he was basically hiding things. I mean, granted, like, his answers to these questions are very much giving, like, oh, he rehearsed them, or is, like, you know, is very well said. That's just kind of like, okay, like, is this a script? But if that's how he is, and that's how he's always going to be, you know, we can't really say that he's lying. Like, you know, he stuck to his story, he stuck to his script. You know, we can't say he's lying. Granted, they asked him, like, oh, you know, if he found, you know, love or found a wife. He said he didn't see any, which is like, you know, Nick said, like, well, you're not supposed to see any. But, I mean, he did propose to Ashley while he was in the pod, so it's just like he did find somebody to see a forever with, but then, you know, how the physical attraction didn't meet up, and then also, you know, everything that happened with the father, you know, interrogating and all these questions, like, on, like, oh, who he was with in Austin and all that stuff, like, kind of really, like, you know, like, yeah, that was the wrap, that wasn't it for him, and, you know, he was kind of over at that point. And, you know, I do agree that, you know, Ashley was trying to find a flaw or a fault in his story, or a mistake in his story to catch him. I do believe that's why the questions were keep on asked. That is what, you know, was going on with all these questions happening about the Austin situation, because, mind you, all these questions happened in the past. Like, mind you, like, okay, like, where do we go from here? So she was like, oh, if he messed up, tell me, you could have just told me if he did that, da-da-da. Like, why do you think he messed up? Like, you know, so she still believes that, you know, he wasn't telling the 100% truth, whatever. You know, she tried to have, like, little banter, because it was just like, oh, like, you know, she joked and said, like, oh, yeah, we're still together. But, you know, Alex just kind of, like, you know, very much defensive. I think, what's her name? Vanessa basically said to Alex, like, you know, if you just, like, be a little bit vulnerable, you know, maybe you can actually, like, you know, find the love of your life or whatever. And I do agree with that statement. Like, you know, if he finds a person that's really his match, you know, and is vulnerable with them, definitely can see a different side of Alex or whatever. But, you know, as he said, he didn't find the person during this experiment for him to be vulnerable with. So, I mean, it is what it is. He, you know, that's what it is. You know, basically he needs to find that person that's able to, you know, he's able to be vulnerable with and, you know, discuss his feelings with. But I don't think he's found that person yet. So we moved on to Emma and Michael, and basically Michael said, like, a couple of days before the wedding, they had a conversation about kids again, and the conversation was like, yeah, they weren't basically sure about kids. It was giving, like, it's not going to be a yes at the altar, it's going to give it no. So when they got to the altar and she said yes, he was very much shocked and like surprised by it. Like he thought it was gonna be a no, but her saying yes, he said like off of emotion, he probably would have said yes too, but he was just like, well, logically we had a conversation a couple days ago and it was like giving like it's gonna be a no. So it was just kind of like, well, I'm gonna go with what we originally discussed. And like he kept it, like I said, he's still 10 toes on what he said, which was a no. So they discussed the whole situation, and he said that yeah, he was kind of like confused by the whole yes at the altar. I mean, granted, the thing is, if you knew all this during the pods and she was upfront about kids, that should have been like, no, like leave it in the pods. Like having that be the deal breaker. Like this, mind you, this is not like, oh, a year of dating, discuss kids, marriage, whatever. This is 6 weeks. 6 weeks of, you do a week of dating, then 6 weeks together or whatever, and you're getting married at the altar. So let's put that all in perspective. In a matter of 6 weeks, her stance of having kids, which was a solid no, to change in 6 weeks to a solid yes, 100% yes. Like, I'm just like, if you knew that in the pod, you should have just left her. Like, no shade, no tea. Because I'm just like, if that was the deal breaker, why did we drag it out? Anyways, we find out that Michael's actually been dating someone for 7 months. Emma was very much surprised because she probably thought she had, they had a chance to spin the block, but he's already in a relationship, and that's probably going to be his actual wife, because I don't think the married kids is a deal breaker for them. Emma said that she's, going to therapy, working on herself. She's been, just working on herself, having fun with herself, and good for her, because obviously she had a lot to unload, and like she had things that her parents and her family didn't even know about her, and she basically unloaded all that during this experiment. And obviously she didn't end up getting married. So we're moving on to Brittany and Devontae. So with Brittany and Devontae, basically, obviously they ended the situation, but the thing is that Brittany thought they were going to continue the relationship. It's going to be a good relationship. They're still going to be dating. Just basically kind of like a Bree and Connor situation, where Bree and Connor are still dating, are still seeing each other, whatever. That's what Brittany thought. Devontae was like, that's a wrap. Like, I'm not going to come back and see. But the thing is that basically Brittany reveals that she texted him and said, well, he didn't make no effort to come see her, and she asked him point blank, like, okay, well, do you want to like break up? Is this the end of the relationship, whatever? And he said, no, I still want to see you. She gave him an out. I still want to see you. Then she brings up that, he said that he had a good on work trip, but he ended up going on a trip with Bree, Priyanka, and Ashley to Austin, Texas to see a show. But Brittany didn't know that. So then after the trip to Austin, he comes back and ends things with Brittany. So Brittany thought she was still in a relationship with Devontae, but Devontae was like, he should have been more direct and tell her like, oh, the relationship was over, He dragged it out, even after she asked him point blank, oh, are we still together, do you want us to be together, or do you want to like end it? And he said, oh, still together, and then goes on a trip with Bree, Priyanka, and Ashley. She didn't even know about it. Didn't even know about the trip. So the thing is that the girls are basically saying like they're very tight, whatever. But Priyanka was basically saying in the audience, she was saying like, nah, I'm not really close to Brittany. Like, I'm not really close. But Bree and Ashley were obviously saying like, oh, they're close. So it's just like, they didn't even hear it from her friends that Devontae was going on a girls trip with them. She heard the information from Amber. Amber was the one that told her about it, because I guess Jordan found out from somewhere that he was going on a trip. Anyways, with that being said, it's just like they were asking like, okay, well, if you guys are friends, and Devontae was essentially her fiance, why wouldn't you check in with Brittany to ask like, is it okay that your fiance or your boyfriend or whatever at the time was going on a girls trip with us to see a concert? Well, why didn't you check in with Brittany? So then, we have Bree over here saying like, oh, I didn't know we needed permission. But I'm like, if you were girls or you were friends or close knit, whatever with Brittany, why wouldn't you check in with Brittany about Devontae being on your girls trip? And if she still thinks that the relationship is, still going, whatever. They said that they didn't know about it, that the relationship was over, ended, whatever. They didn't know. Anyways, they were like, oh, Devontae stayed at the Airbnb, but Priyanka was like, no, when he was coming in the night, he has, Airbnb didn't confirm, so she allowed him to stay one night at their Airbnb for a night because, she couldn't let him go on the street. I'm just like, hotels are available. Like, you didn't need to be in the Airbnb, no shade. You could have go to a hotel. But, she stayed for one, I guess he stayed in Priyanka's Airbnb for a night or whatever. Bianca made it clear that she wasn't close with Brittany. Like, she was just like, it wasn't clear. She was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, we didn't need permission, like, if they were calling him Devo, like, all that. Then we find out later on that Devontae ends up having a child on the way, and he's engaged to another girl.
One of the things that I talked about during this was I wanted to go into this to be a husband and a father. Those were two of the most important things for me. And I got some exciting news that I am going to be a father this year. So,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, you didn't tell me.
So just like, what's the timeline between this happening? Also, Brittany's father was in the audience, and Brittany's father was like, when I asked you, when we had that meeting, did you ask all the questions that you needed to ask? And also, did you lie to me about wanting to marry my daughter? He was just like being very respectful. I wouldn't say giving him grace, but being very respectful, because he could have really came at him crazy, because he basically stringed his daughter along and kind of made her feel silly a bit. But yeah, so he basically asked these questions, and Devontae was like, oh, at the time, he didn't lie. He wanted to, not commit. He said he doesn't quit relationships. So, but it's like, it's not a game. It's not about quitting it. It's about if you're going to commit and see it through. You didn't see it through. You ended the whole relationship and decided to end things and string her along. So after all that questions were asked, he revealed that he's engaged to another girl and having a kid on the way. So it's just like, if you didn't like Brittany, just say that. If you didn't like Brittany, just say that. You didn't have to string her along and make her feel silly. And like Brittany was saying, she was kind of like lowering herself and stuff like that for the relationship, and then she was. But the thing is, I was like, Devontae made it loud and clear he didn't like you with his actions, not with his words. His words was not meeting his actions, but he made it loud and clear with his actions that he did not like you. Man's just smiling all 32 teeth now that he's out of relationship with you. Also, the fact that they said that he and Alex were roommates in Austin. So I'm like, how is him and Alex roommates in Austin? But now he's engaged with a fiance and a baby on the way. But I'm just like, and then he said that he had a house in Ohio. So I'm like, what's tea? How you a roommate to Alex in Austin? You got a house in Ohio and you got a fiance and a baby on the way. Like, what's tea? So I'm just like, how does that even work? But it is what it is. That was what it was. Also circling back to Vic and Christine. Christine says, her relationship with her father, her father was very absent. So with, Vic helped her reach out to her father. She was able to reach out to her father. They were able to meet him, talk to him. She was able to forgive him for whatever he's done. And, basically move on in her life from that. And obviously, it was actually really nice to see, how both Vic and Christine, help each other in these relationships. And so it was kind of really nice to see. They ended up getting, some TurboTax thing for a vacation or honeymoon. So it looks like, they're trying to, do their due diligence after, sliding them from not going to Cabo for their honeymoon. But, yeah, that was the reunion. The reunion definitely did its 1-2. We had a little montage of all the couples. I think Zach and Bliss were able to show you know, revealed that they're having a baby boy, and, you know, Zach's grandmother died, so she had a recording of, you know, their gender reveal, and it was actually kind of sweet. But yeah, after 10 seasons, we're, you know, it's a lot. But yeah, this was episode 13, Love is Blind season 10 reunion. And if you guys like this video, comment down below, let me know your thoughts, comments, concerns. You guys subscribe to my channel, subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.